So yesterday after stream, after brunch with Egnards, I went to the movies and saw Eddington with my wife, and we were going to go see Superman. I promise this is all important to the game. But before we went to go see Superman, we went to Shake Shack, and I made the mistake of checking in on Reddit uh, during that time when I was waiting for our food, and I happened to see a question from someone that asked about why, not to be crude, but essentially why the end game of Star Wars Galaxy Heroes, why those players seem to have such a hard on for Relic 9 materials, and why it's seemingly so important. Now, this person is also an end game player, right, and doesn't seem to get it. And I did respond, and I very rarely respond on Reddit anymore. Did respond, and this person, I think um, they didn't get the response that they wanted from the community and ended up deleting their post. And I still wanted to talk about this specific topic because I don't think that this person really fully understood or grasped what they were trying to learn. And I think that a few people just started to shit on him about it. And I think there probably are a lot of people out there like this person, really just kind of trying to learn a little bit more about how the end game works. So stay tuned after the intro, and we will chat about this a little. So when we talk about Relic 9 in this game, I think it's important for us to kind of historically look at every phase of the game, right? So when I first started playing, G12 wasn't even a thing yet. So having a G10 or a G11 character was pretty enticing, was pretty strong. It was exactly what you needed. And that was the expectation for any journey events or any raids at the time. Then G12 came out, and that was, pretty awesome. And kind of the same thing happened. And then Relics came out, and we had Relic 0 through Relic 7. And Relics were really hard to get. I remember spending $50 around Thanksgiving. It was the first $50 that I ever, so the first money that I ever spent on this game because of some other issues. And I spent like $50 to get Jedi Knight Anakin from Relic 0 to Relic 7. And I thought I was such a badass at the time having this Relic character. I remembered having only a handful of Relic characters because they were very hard to get. We did not have we didn't have all of the tools that we have now. None of us had any signal data. We still had tons of antenna farms. And although we did have hordes and hordes and hordes of old gear saved, so like up until chromium transistors, pretty much everybody was able to have that relic scavenger, that relic scrap stuff pretty readily available for a long time. It was difficult to get characters to relics, and it was difficult to just get Chirotech, right? This is when the challenge tiers of assault battles were originally coming out. So even just bring a character to tier 13 was tough. So when we did things like DSGO, a lot of it was doable by G12 characters. A lot of the journey events at the time were doable by G12 characters. And the game has progressed since then. Since we've gotten Galactic Legends, we have seen, the requirement of needing R3, the requirement of needing R5, the requirement of needing R7, um, and the resource events that come out with those things. But at the same time, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we've also seen things like, and I know it's not specifically out right now, so I don't think I can access the map, things like Rise of the Empire, right? And Rise of the Empire, to do the first phase, you need Relic 5. And that was like the free to play stopping point for a very long time. To do phases, 5 and 6, you need Relic 9 characters. To do Relic 4, phase 4, you need Relic 8 characters. So the game is increasingly building us into this funnel of you need higher and higher Relic materials at the same time. we look at things like the raid, right? And the raid has this R9 tier that gives you 3.6 million points, uh, which you're going to want if you want your guild to be able to build out materials to do better. Essentially, if we look back to, I think it was about 3 years ago when Relic 9 first came out, nobody did it. Nobody Relic 9'd their characters unless you were a super whale. And the reason that nobody did it is because there was no reason to do it. There was no Rise of the Empire. There was no raid that needed it. Maybe one or, every couple of people did it on Admiral Piet to make their executor counters a little bit easier in the mirror match. You got plus speed. But for the most part, people just hoarded their droid brains and their gear to keypads. And this continued for a pretty long time up until Rise of the Empire came out. When Rise of the Empire came out, there was a hard signal that, hey, you are going to need to Relic 9 characters eventually. Now, when that first came out, no guild was at that level, so it didn't matter. Guilds like my own, we were still going, oh crap, we need Relic 5 platoons. Guilds at the whale level were going, oh crap, we need Relic 7 platoons. Uh, but in the interim 3 years, we have seen obviously an expansion in our GPs, which has allowed the upper echelon of guilds who are not whale guilds to start to see those phase 5 planets. And then the upper echelon of guilds, the like super whale guilds, to start to see the phase 5 and the phase 6 planets, which means needing full teams of Relic 9 characters versus being in a position where maybe you'd only Relic 9 one or two characters. The other important thing, and I kind of mentioned this before, is the raid. And while yes, we can say, hey, I can take 5 teams to Relic 8 and max this raid out, or 4 teams to Relic 8 and max out my average contribution needed for the raid. The important thing that we need to keep in mind is that there are varying metrics of players within a guild, right? So if we look at my guild as an example, I don't know if I can, oh, perfect, I can, right? The top scorer has 14 million. The bottom scorer, this person actually just joined the guild, so they didn't score anything because they couldn't. But the bottom scorer has 1 million. So we can talk about things like averages and saying, hey, everyone can RE every team and be fine. But realistically, you're always going to have a bottom half of your guild that isn't doing things the same way as the rest of your guild. There's no way to be in a position where everybody is doing their part in every aspect of the game all of the time. It doesn't happen, which means that players up here, they do need to subsidize that if we want to see higher reward tiers and reward boxes, right? We have in the last year and a half seen several ways to make getting these Relic 9s easier, between Duel of the Fates, the Gritty of Patrol, which both give R9 materials, between the era battles, which are more, we talk about Relic 9, we're talking about more the bigger spenders. It does put more of those materials in their pocket. The last 2 weeks I've seen in the weekly shipment droid brains for ally points. I think it's 135,000 ally points for 3 droid brains. We've seen all of these things from CG saying, hey, we need you to get on board with this because we are starting to require it. We've also seen the need for higher relics in kit, right? And we started to see that. I think the first one was actually in, um, where is she? Omega's, the Omicron. This might not be the first one, but it's the first one I remember. All Bad Batch allies gain max health equal to 10% of their max protection for each of their own relic amplifier levels, max 100%, right? So may not be the first one, but it is the first one I remember. Um, and in the last year and a half, I've seen quite a few of them. So, for example, in Galactic Republic, I believe that Master Qui-Gon has one as well. somewhere in his kit. Let's see if we can find it. Uh, oh, maybe it's one of his specials. Not really good at max health. No, special. No, maybe Padawan Obi-Wan. But I know one of them has. You know what we can do is if we go over to um, .gg, we actually look at the character. Master Qui-Gon, gameplay. Let's see if we can find. No, I guess it's not in his kit. Maybe it's in Padawan Obi-Wan. There it is, right? There's an ally, Master Qui-Gon. Whenever he uses ability during his turn, Padawan Obi-Wan assists, dealing 40% less damage. The first time Master Qui-Gon is defeated, Padawan Obi-Wan takes a bonus turn and gains 5% offense for each relic amplifier level Master Qui-Gon had. So that's just another example of that being in the game. My favorite example would be, hope everybody knows, Jar Jar Binks, right? It maybe is in this one. There it is. The ally shield generator gains 2 stacks of plasma shielding for every 3 relic amplifier levels Jar Jar has, right? We're starting to see these things more and more in kits. This morning, I actually took a step back. I looked at the last couple of marquees from this year. We've seen 13 marquees, and 5 of them have had some sort of relic amplifier clause in their kit. This is, again, all CG signaling and saying, hey, this is more important, this is more important, this is more important. Now, you may be a player that says, well, I can do tons of things without needing Relic 9. But the reality is that you are screwing your guild hard if you don't reframe your thinking and you don't start thinking to the future, right? We have seen Relic 9 being needed for ships. We are now seeing Relic 9 needed for Galactic Legends. We are seeing Relic 9 needed for combat squads in the raid, and as we're still up in the air on whether or not um, CG will allow us to continue undermanning, but a lot of those undermans, like the clone split, does rely on R9, and having 5 of those guys at R9 gives you considerably more score than having 6 characters at R8 for 2 different 3-man for the R8 squads. Actually, I don't think you'd even be able to do that. It would be like an R8 squad, a 3-man R8 and a 4-man R8, so 7 characters. If you're not doing those full squads, you're also hurting your guilds again in TV, where you're going to have problems with being able to compete at the higher level. Now, the counter argument here that I have heard is, hey, you're never going to see a return on investment on the stars that you have in TB. And you're probably right. I'm not going to do the math. But the reality is that when I personally talk about return on investment, I am specifically talking about things that you do only with the intention of being able to do a single event, right? So when we talk about like doing POW and Qui-Gon to R9 instead of R8 like normal, you're specifically talking about their ability to get Duel of the Fates. We're ignoring the fact that they're also an amazing GAC squad. We're ignoring the fact that they are also, or were also, an amazing Battle for Naboo squad. Those are all things that get taken into account. We're ignoring that they're an awesome TW squad. They're an awesome TB squad. They're an awesome Conquest squad. We are specifically saying this is your return for Duel of the Fates, ignoring the fact that they are helping you build score and other things. And that is something that we need to consider with TB as well, right? Is that when I bring, for example, the 5 clones to R9, I am giving myself a really amazing GAC squad. I'm giving myself a really amazing W squad. I am allowing myself to more combats in TB. And for my guild personally, the last the 4 phases of TB, every single combat point is amplified. The combat points I get in day 3 help me with day 6 because of the way preloading works. So it's helping me in TB. It has helped through my era battles. It has helped me through the raid, being able to get 7.2 million points with a single team. Again, I'm aware that may change. Um, it is basically doing an all around job throughout the game, as well as helping my get a higher star count here. Now, it's really hard to see the jumps in the TB counts, right? Because we see like, oh, all right, I get 25 more crystals at each one of the jumps, no big deal. I get 150 more MK3 at each one of these jumps, no big deal. But when we look at like a jump between 35 and 40, we're looking at 750 more MK3, and that is a pretty big deal. We're also ignoring the fact, and again, you don't see quantities in here, that there are big jumps in the materials you get. So the first R9 material that I believe is at star 5, right? So at star, the jump between 34 and 35, you get a geared up keypad. That's insane. That's big. That's a huge deal. That is every 10 months, an extra R9's worth of gear to keypads does not seem like a ton, but when you've been playing a game for 10 years, that is a ton of effort. I believe it might be at 40, it might be at 41, I'm not sure. There's a second gear to keypad, so that reduces it from every 10 months to every 5 months, right? I don't know where the next one is, but those are big jumps in materials over time. The hoarding mentality is something that does need to kind of change, because if you are hoarding for the sake of hoarding, what are you actually hoarding for? What is the purpose? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? If it's so that number goes up, you're not helping anybody. You're not helping yourself. You're not helping your guild. You are a waste of space in your guild. Now, if it is because you want to very particularly be able to do something that's different, right? As an example, I keep about 30,000 crystals on my account. That is not hoarding for the sake of hoarding. That is me saying, okay, I recognize that there are big things in this game that I need to go for. And this hoard allows me to do that when I'm in a position where I feel that that's necessary. And I've done that before. I've done that for Executor. I've done that for Profundity. I've done that for Leviathan. I did that with a lot of extra crystals for the clones. Make sure that I had the clones. I did it for Jar Jar. I dropped 90,000 crystals, right? All because I had a little hoard. That hoard had a purpose. But if your hoard doesn't have a purpose, it's not serving you. You are fundamentally holding back your account, right? And when it comes to R9s, we as more end game or late game players need to start thinking, okay, how can I benefit myself? How can I build materials over time? How can I help my guild? How can I help the people around me so that I get more passive income, so that they get more passive income, so that we all generate more overall? Within my guild, we have a couple of whales, we have a couple of casual spenders, we have a couple of free to play. And while I am not hurting for materials, right? I'm pretty much here on my account. Um, while I am not hurting for materials, there are players in my guild who need this stuff a lot more than I do. And being able to help them out benefits everybody. So, to TLDR and answer this question just really quickly, why is R9 important? Because that's the new metric by which CG is starting to signal their content, right? They have continuously built up the bottom end of this game, so we're now at a point where that R9 is very important. I do see us getting an R10, maybe even an R11, though R11 sounds weird. In the next 6 to 12 months, Why? Because we have seen a greater adoption rate of these R9, because they have signaled very heavily. Did they do that in the first 3 years of R9? No, they could not, because most people were not engaging. Okay, but now we're at a point where I think, if I remember correctly, yesterday I have 30 of them, right? And I have the materials to do seven more. If you are not an endgame player and you are watching this, maybe you're not understanding the R9 mentality right now, but I want you to consider that with every aspect of the game, with you being able to build up. I look at people in my guild and I have been on a few of their accounts, and I see, for example, characters. I might have a few of them, but very, very few. And I see 50% of their unused characters don't have any mods on them. And they say, well, it doesn't matter because I'm not using those characters. Well, those mods equal GP, right? And 100,000 more GP, where each of that 100,000 stacks over 4 days, that's 400,000 GP. And if everybody in the guild is doing that and can get another 100,000 GP, that's 400,000 times five. That's an extra 20 million GP. 22 times five. 10, sorry. No, four. That's another 20 million GP that we have to deploy over those 4 days, which helps to get us a star, right? I was on a guildmate's account a few days ago where he had enough of this backing material to get every one of his ship their their backup stuff, their whatever that's called, the backup ability. And I asked him why he didn't do it. Obviously, a lot of the ships, they don't need it because, for example, punishing one wherever it is always going to be in the opening lineup. So why should I get this ability? Because again, that's like 5,000 GP, and over the course of all of your ships, that can mean a lot of extra GP for your guild. But now the stipulation here is that we are talking about using the materials that you do not need. So in his case, he had enough to literally max out all of the ones that are currently available in the game. There's no reason not to do it. I'm not telling you to go in and use all of your material that is limiting to your account. I am telling you to think about building your an account in a way that effectively helps you, effectively helps your guild, and doesn't hold you back for no reason. Um, I'm not going to stall this out anymore. Yell at me in the comments. Tell me whatever you want. I don't care. But I hope that that answers the question. It has been running through my mind for essentially the last 18 to 20 hours. With that said, peace out. Have a great rest of your day.